Imagine a city gripped by fear. For 16 years, a phantom bomber terrorized New York City. He left 33 bombs in the city's most iconic locations. From Grand Central Station to Radio City Music Hall, the police were baffled, chasing thousands of dead ends, unable to identify the man who called himself FP. The bomber was a ghost, a myth, a master of his deadly craft. Then, in a final act of desperation, the police did something unthinkable. They didn't consult an informant or a detective. They went to a psychiatrist. What that doctor told them sounded like magic. It was a description so detailed, so impossibly specific, that it seemed to come from a crystal ball. Yet, one sentence from that profile would lead police directly to the bomber's front door. This is the story of George Metesky, and the day the criminal profile was born. It started in November 1940. A small, almost harmless-looking wooden toolbox was found on a windowsill at the Con Edison power plant in Manhattan. Inside was a simple brass pipe packed with gunpowder. It was a dud, it never exploded. But it came with a message, written in strange, blocky letters. Con Edison crooks, this is for you. It was SIGNEDFP then, for years nothing. The bomber seemed to vanish as quickly as he appeared. But in 1951, the terror returned, and this time it was personal. He wasn't just targeting the power company anymore. He was targeting the public. Bombs started appearing in crowded places. A phone booth at Grand Central Station, a seat at Radio City Music Hall, a locker in the New York Public Library. Panic swept the city. The New York Police Department threw everything they had at the case. They investigated over 9,000 potential suspects. They questioned every disgruntled former Con Edison employee. They looked into every known maniac and madman in the 5 boroughs. But they found nothing. The bomber was invisible, leaving behind only fear and the mysterious initials FP. By 1956, after 16 long years and 33 bombs, the police were at their wits' end. Captain Howard Finney, head of the bomb squad, was desperate. He decided to take a gamble, a move so unconventional it would change the course of criminology forever. He went to a psychiatrist. Dr. James Brussel wasn't a detective. He was a man who believed that every crime scene was a mirror, reflecting the mind of the person who created it. Inspector Finney showed him the evidence, photos of the bombs, the crime scenes, and most importantly, the bomber's letters. Brussel studied the neat, precise block handwriting and the meticulous construction of the bombs. He saw a pattern. This man, Brussel declared, is a classic paranoid. He hates Con Edison because he believes they've done him a great injustice. Paranoiacs are obsessive grudge holders. They never forget. Then, Brussel began to list traits that seemed impossible to know. He is male, he stated confidently. He is of Slavic descent, likely from Eastern Europe, because he uses old-fashioned words like dastardly. He's a Roman Catholic. He lives with an older female relative, probably an unmarried sister or an aunt, and he doesn't live in New York City. He lives in Connecticut. The detectives in the room scribbled down the notes, their faces a mix of skepticism and intrigue. A psychiatrist playing detective? It sounded like something out of a pulp novel. But just as they were preparing to leave, Dr. Brussel closed his eyes, as if picturing the man himself, and added one final bizarre detail. One more thing, he said slowly. When you catch him, and I assure you, he will be wearing a double-breasted suit, and it will be buttoned. The room fell silent. The police thought he had finally gone too far. How on earth could a doctor, sitting in his office, possibly know what clothes a complete stranger was wearing? It was absurd, outlandish, impossible, but they had no other leads. They decided to publish the profile, hoping for a miracle. Armed with this strange new psychological blueprint, the investigation shifted. Instead of hunting for criminals or maniacs, the police began searching for a very specific type of person. A disgruntled former Con Edison employee who fit Dr. Brussel's profile. An office clerk named Alice Kelly was tasked with combing through mountains of old personnel files. Deep in a dusty cabinet, she found the file for a man named George Metesky. He had been injured in a boiler accident at a Con Edison plant back in 1931 and was later laid off. His file was filled with angry letters he had written to the company, demanding compensation for what he called a permanent disability. As Kelly read the letters, her heart began to race. Metesky used unusual phrases, just like the bomber. And there, on the page, was the very same phrase from the profile. Dastardly deeds. They compared his handwriting from the file to the bomber's letters. It was a perfect match. FP finally had a name. On a freezing night in January 1957, a convoy of police cars pulled up silently to a modest house in Waterbury, Connecticut. Officers surrounded the property and knocked on the front door. A moment later, it opened. A polite, smiling, middle-aged man in pajamas stood before them. He was 54 years old. He was single. He lived in the house with his two unmarried older sisters. He was of Slavic heritage, and he was a devout Catholic. Every single detail from Dr. Brussel's impossible profile was correct. Except for one. Metesky was in his pajamas, not a suit. The police told him he was under arrest. He just smiled calmly and said, "I know why you are here. FP stands for fair play." He then politely asked the officers if he could get dressed before they took him to the station. The officers agreed. A few minutes later, George Metesky walked out of his bedroom, ready to go. He was wearing a dark double-breasted suit, and he had buttoned every single button. Dr. Brussel became an overnight legend. His astounding profile of George Metesky wasn't just a lucky guess. It was a revolution. He would later go on to help authorities in the hunt for the Boston Strangler, further cementing his legacy. That cold January night in 1957 didn't just end the Mad Bomber's 16-year reign of terror. It proved, for the first time, that psychology could be a powerful weapon in the fight against crime. It laid the foundation for what would eventually become the FBI's renowned behavioral science unit, the real-life Mindhunters. The capture of the Mad Bomber wasn't just the end of a manhunt. It was the beginning of a whole new era of criminal investigation. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories about the fascinating history of criminology, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And check out this next video to see how the discovery of DNA completely changed policing forever.